a path that we go down. There's no path going there, so we have to go down here. Come on.
Since locate two missing juveniles, Libby Rose Lynn German, last seen at the High Bridge in Delphi, Indiana, at approximately 1300 hours. Second juvenile, Abigail Joyce Williams, subject was last seen wearing a gray zip up sweatshirt and a red shirt with a red shirt under it and jeans.
On an unusually warm February afternoon in 2017, two close friends headed out for a walk along a quiet hiking trail in Delphi, Indiana. A simple plan that would soon become the beginning of a case that captured the nation's attention. It was the kind of day that felt borrowed from spring, quiet, bright, and deceptively peaceful. The Monon High Bridge stretched ahead of them, its aging wooden planks suspended nearly 70 feet above the creek below. Once part of a bustling railroad line, it now stood as a relic of another era, weathered, unstable, and eerily silent. But what began as a simple walk would soon become one of the most haunting cases in modern American history. Because somewhere on that bridge, someone was watching. And within hours, a small town afternoon would turn into a national nightmare, leaving behind a mystery defined by one chilling piece of evidence: a voice. A voice that millions would later hear. Yet for years, no one could definitively name. This is the story of the Delphi, a case marked by terror, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of answers. Delphi was the kind of town where people waved from passing cars. With a population of just a few thousand, it was a place where neighbors knew each other by name. Doors were often left unlocked, and serious crime felt like something that happened somewhere else. That illusion of safety made February 13th feel like any other day. Schools were closed for a scheduled break, and many families took advantage of the mild weather to spend time outdoors. Among them were two 8th grade friends, 14-year-old Liberty German and 13-year-old Abigail Williams. Liberty, known to most as Libby, had a curious mind and a growing interest in photography. Friends described her as thoughtful, creative, and wise beyond her years. Abby, gentle and warm, had a quiet strength about her. She loved art and animals, and those closest to her often spoke about her kindness, the kind that made people feel instantly at ease. The girls had planned a simple afternoon together: fresh air, a walk, a little independence. Nothing about it seemed unusual. Shortly after 1:30 p.m., Libby's older sister dropped them off near the trail system that led to the Monon High Bridge. They were expected to be picked up just a couple of hours later. In between, Libby shared a photo to social media. Abby walking carefully across the bridge, bundled against the February breeze. It looked like the picture of an ordinary teenage afternoon. No one who saw that image could have imagined what was already unfolding just beyond the frame. By late afternoon, the plan had started to unravel. When the time came for the girls to be picked up, they weren't at the designated meeting spot. At first, there was no panic, just the assumption that perhaps they had wandered farther down the trail. Calls went unanswered, messages unread, minutes stretched into something heavier. Family members began searching the area themselves, calling out their names into the growing quiet of the woods. As daylight faded, concern hardened into fear. By early evening, authorities were notified, and a search effort quickly took shape. Volunteers arrived. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Voices echoed across the terrain. In a town like Delphi, people didn't hesitate to help. No one wanted to believe the unthinkable. Many assumed the girls were simply lost, maybe with a dead phone battery, waiting somewhere to be found. But as the cold February night settled in, hope became threaded with dread. Just after noon the following day, the search came to a devastating end. The bodies of Libby German and Abigail Williams were discovered in a wooded area not far from the bridge. The news sent shockwaves through Delphi. What had once felt like a safe, close-knit community was suddenly confronted with a terrifying reality. Someone capable of unimaginable violence had walked among them. And worse, that person was still unidentified. Investigators moved quickly, securing the scene and urging the public for patience as they began the painstaking work of understanding what had happened. But even in those earliest hours, one thing was already clear. This case would not be simple. In the days that followed, investigators revealed a detail that would both stun the public and redefine the entire investigation. Libby German had managed to capture evidence on her phone, not just an image, but video and audio. Somewhere in the final moments before everything changed, Libby had the presence of mind to record the man approaching them on the bridge. It was an act of extraordinary awareness, one that investigators would later call crucial. Soon, the world would see a brief clip, a man walking steadily across the wooden planks, hands in his pockets, head slightly down, unremarkable at a glance, yet instantly unsettling once you understood the context. Then came the audio. 4 words that would echo across the country. Down the hill. The voice was calm, controlled, terrifying in its normalcy. For millions who later heard it, the question became unavoidable. Who was the man on the bridge? In the earliest stages of the investigation, authorities faced a paradox. They had something many cases never do: a visual, a voice, a presence captured in time. And yet, the man remained unknown. The short video extracted from Libby German's phone showed a figure moving deliberately across the Monon High Bridge, a structure locals knew required careful footing. The gaps between the aging wooden ties were uneven, forcing anyone who crossed to watch each step. But the man appeared comfortable, familiar, as if he had walked that path before. He wore a dark jacket, loose-fitting jeans, and a cap pulled low. Layers of clothing made his build difficult to determine. Even his hands, buried in his pockets, seemed to conceal more than they revealed. There was nothing outwardly dramatic about him. No mask, no attempt to hide. And that normalcy made the image all the more disturbing, because it suggested confidence, control, intent. When investigators released the clip to the public, they hoped someone, anyone, might recognize the subtle details. A posture, a gait, the outline of a face. Tips began pouring in almost immediately. Thousands of them. But identifying a stranger from a grainy video is far more difficult than it seems. Every viewer saw something slightly different. Every interpretation created another possibility. Meanwhile, the audio, just 4 words long, became one of the most analyzed recordings in modern criminal investigation. Down the hill. Experts would later note the tone, authoritative, but not rushed. the voice carried a quiet expectation of compliance. It was the voice of someone who believed he was in control of the moment. And for investigators, it confirmed a chilling reality. This was not a random encounter that spiraled unexpectedly. It appeared deliberate. In the weeks that followed, Delphi transformed. Satellite trucks lined quiet streets. National reporters arrived. Helicopters circled overhead. What had once been a peaceful community suddenly found itself at the center of an international spotlight. Parents who had rarely worried before began driving their children everywhere. Trail systems emptied. Doors that once stayed unlocked were now secured each night. Fear had a way of rewriting normal life. Yet amid that fear, something else emerged. Resolve. Search teams had become support networks. Neighbors checked on one another. Schools brought in counselors. Memorials grew, covered in flowers, handwritten notes, and flickering candles. Libby and Abby were remembered not for the tragedy, but for the light they had brought into the lives around them. Still, grief carried an unanswered question. How could someone do this and simply disappear? 5 months after the murders, investigators released a suspect sketch. The drawing depicted a heavier, older-looking man with a stern expression and a goatee. For many, the image became inseparable from the case, printed across television screens and shared endlessly online. Authorities urged the public to look closely. Someone knew this face, they insisted. Someone had seen something that afternoon. And again, tips surged. But leads that seem promising in the beginning often dissolve under scrutiny. Alibis are checked, timelines verified, small inconsistencies examined. Still, no arrest came. As months turned into years, the case began to take on a haunting reputation. One of those rare investigations where evidence existed, yet answers remained just beyond reach. Unsolved cases carry a unique weight. Investigators know that memories fade, witnesses move, details blur. Yet they also understand something the public sometimes forgets. Cases are rarely static. Behind the scenes, evidence is revisited. Technologies improve. Fresh eyes re-examine old assumptions. And sometimes, the smallest overlooked detail becomes the thread that unravels everything. Authorities remained careful about what they disclosed, balancing transparency with the need to protect the integrity of the investigation. But they wanted the public to remember one thing above all. The man on the bridge was still out there, possibly hiding in plain sight, possibly living a life that appeared entirely ordinary. Alongside the sketch, authorities released additional audio, slightly longer this time. The voice again, familiar, controlled, unsettling. The release of the updated sketch reignited public attention. Suddenly, Delphi was no longer just a quiet town in Indiana. It had become the center of a national obsession. News outlets broadcast the new image repeatedly. Social media erupted with theories, debates, and speculation. Everyday people pored over every detail. The shape of the man's jaw, the angle of his walk, the cadence of the chilling words captured on Libby's phone. Families across the country, parents in their homes, teens in classrooms, even investigators in other states. Everyone wanted to know one thing. Who was the man on that bridge? Tips began flooding in from unexpected places. A man remembered a stranger walking near the trail months prior. A neighbor reported a car that seemed out of place. One tip even came from a hiker who had noticed a man photographing the bridge the previous summer. Authorities sifted through thousands of leads. Some were promising, others dead ends. Some tips were contradictory, causing frustration. Yet every piece of information was carefully documented, every potential lead analyzed. While the investigation relied on traditional methods, interviews, tip lines, and community engagement, it was modern technology that became the pivotal force. Analysts began using pattern recognition software on Liberty German's video. Digital enhancement revealed subtle details: the man's stride, the tilt of his shoulders, the outline of his clothing. Even his posture, the way he held himself, was studied to provide clues about his age, physical condition, and possible occupation. Forensic audio specialists analyzed the recording of his voice. They measured pitch, pace, and cadence. Linguists weighed in on inflection and pronunciation. These details seemed minor on their own, but together they began forming a profile, a psychological fingerprint of the man who would shock a community and ultimately the nation. In Delphi, the investigation affected everyone. Schools hired additional security personnel. Parents drove children to extracurricular activities personally rather than letting them walk. Businesses and neighborhoods installed cameras, hoping to catch something, anything, that could be relevant. Vigilant citizens formed volunteer search teams, patrolling trails, checking wooded areas, and distributing flyers. Candlelight vigils honored Liberty and Abigail, while messages on social media reminded the public that the girls had lives, friends, and families who would never stop seeking justice. Local law enforcement faced a dual challenge: keeping the public informed while protecting the integrity of the investigation. The pressure was immense. They understood that any misstep could alert the perpetrator or compromise evidence. Months turned into years. The case seemed frozen, yet the investigators never stopped working. Then, in a dramatic turn, digital forensics provided a breakthrough. Investigators were able to narrow down a person of interest using a combination of tips, video analysis, and advanced software tracking patterns in the suspect's movements and behavior. By comparing subtle cues from Libby's recording to digital records and public sightings, a suspect emerged. Someone who matched the voice, gait, and appearance depicted in the updated sketch. Authorities prepared quietly, avoiding leaks. They understood that the moment they moved, the suspect could vanish again. This was the culmination of years of painstaking work, patience, persistence, and the relentless pursuit of truth. When the arrest finally happened, the news spread like wildfire. People everywhere, not just in Indiana, followed every detail. Mainstream media ran continuous coverage, dissecting timelines, motives, and investigative techniques. Analysts debated the psychology behind the suspect's actions, the warning signs that had gone unnoticed, and how technology had finally bridged the gap between evidence and justice. In Delphi, families felt a bittersweet relief. Grief did not vanish, but there was a sense that the girls' voices had been heard, and that justice, delayed but unwavering, was finally moving forward. The Delphi murders were more than a tragic crime. They highlighted the intersection of modern technology, community vigilance, and investigative perseverance. They revealed the fragile illusion of safety in even the quietest towns, and the ways in which one small act, Liberty German recording a video, could be the key to unraveling an otherwise unsolvable case. It became a case study in patience, diligence, and the relentless pursuit of justice against the backdrop of fear, confusion, and loss. And yet, even after an arrest and years of legal proceedings, one truth remains. The echo of that day, the image of the bridge, and the haunting voice that warned down the hill will linger in the minds of a community and a nation for decades to come. The Delphi are more than a story of loss. They are a stark reminder that even in the quietest towns, ordinary life can be shattered in a single afternoon. Liberty German and Abigail Williams were two young girls with full lives ahead of them. Hopes, dreams, and the promise of countless tomorrows. Their lives were stolen, but their courage and presence continue to guide the investigation and inspire the community. For investigators, the case underscored the power of meticulous work and modern technology. A brief video, 4 chilling words, and the sharp eyes of a young girl became the key that eventually unraveled the mystery. For Delphi, it was a lesson in resilience. A community faced unimaginable pain, yet people came together, neighbors, friends, and strangers alike, united by a desire for justice. The bridge, once just a relic of a railroad past, now stands as a symbol of vigilance, memory, and the unbreakable human spirit. Even with the case officially closed, the questions linger. How could someone commit such an act and remain unseen for so long? What signs did we miss, both as individuals and as a society? And how can communities ensure that tragedy like this never happens again? These are not easy questions. They offer no quick answers. But they are questions worth asking, and they are worth remembering, because they honor the memory of Liberty and Abigail. If you were moved by this story, pause for a moment and reflect. What would you have done differently if you were in Delphi that day? Comment your thoughts below. Your perspective matters, and your voice keeps the memory of these girls alive. Subscribe now. Turn on notifications, because the next case is already in production, and it promises to be just as gripping. As the sun sets over the trails and the bridge stands silent, one truth remains clear. Even in the darkest moments, vigilance, courage, and hope can shine through, guiding us, warning us, and reminding us that every voice, no matter how small, can change the course of history.